collaboration. So I just wanted to thank you for joining us and excited to hear about the quality improvement projects, the brief show and tell you're going to do for us today, and hear about any challenges. You know, if you don't have a project, that's okay. We just want to hear where you're at. And happy Thanksgiving if I don't see you before then, but I'll save that thank yous for the end.
Happy Thanksgiving, and thank you so much for those words. Welcome, Julie. I would like to kick it over to Jasmine to get us started on today's presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you. And you all will have to excuse me. I'm cameraless. I've been having the worst problems with my allergies and my eyes. And so I will spare you watching me blink constantly throughout the presentation. But thank you all for joining us this morning. And let's get started. Go ahead, Michael. So this presentation will largely cover advising on provider CQ and performance measurement to sort of continue our series. Oh, wait. I think we're advising on quality improvement.
We are advising on quality improvement. I apologize about that typo. Apparently I pulled up the wrong slides. Please hold on just a moment.
I think these are the right ones, Michael.
Okay, there we go. Well, then at least I changed the title. Embarrassing mistake, but that's okay. The idea is now it's on recording that no one is perfect.
Exactly. So we'll be advising on provider quality improvement activities. And we're excited to hear from you all about the work that you're doing and provide you all feedback today. Go ahead. Next slide. So again, here's just your Zoom helpful hints. Although, you know, with the pandemic, most of us are overly familiar with Zoom at this point in our lives. But remember that all of these tips and tricks can help make our day time together flow very well. I encourage you to enter your name, your AA, and your favorite place to day trip in the chat room so that we can capture attendance here today. Favorite place to day trip? I don't know. I don't know my favorite. Maybe probably Chicago because that's a short drive for me. So learning objectives for the day. We're gonna really focus on naming the activities associated with our QI projects. With QI projects that you take as an AA to prepare for a regional QI project. List tools used as an AA to manage a regional QI project. Work through explaining how and when to include stakeholders in your regional QI project lifecycle, how to support provider organizations using recent organizational assessment information, and to describe appropriate approaches for regional QI project development that will include non-clinical services. Is your slides cutting off at the bottom? Michael?
Mine are not, but
the full slide.
Yeah, it should be the full slide.
Okay. For some reason on the bottom of my screen, I can't see the rest of the slide. But so appropriate approaches for regional QI projects to include non-clinical services by applying learning from our past sessions.
That's right.
So here's a list of our toolkit items that you'll receive from today's session. So you'll have your presentation slides, of course, looking at Achieving Together in Dallas's QIP framework, sample QIP reporting forms, PDSA worksheets, tracking forms, sample submissions and data results tracking worksheets, Texas Create Equity, network QIP examples, and a variety of quality progress articles. So a very inclusive toolkit that you all will get today that will hopefully help you as you continue on.
So we'd like to just kick it over to Julie quickly to provide some warm words of congratulations to one of our colleagues who's recently been recognized.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, congratulations to Raquelian Ellison. She has done an amazing job. She's with the Houston Resource Group in consumer engagement. She recently was awarded recognition from the Center for Quality Improvement and Innovation. They only select a couple winners annually. Sometimes they even skip a year if they don't think anyone's worthy. And she has achieved a great success. So we're so proud of her, making Texas look good in such an important aspect of consumer involvement, engagement, and quality. Raquelian, would you like to say a few words, or we don't want to put you on the spot, but if you'd like, we'd love to hear from you, or Tiffany, or anybody from TRG.
Okay, well, no, I've shown up for this. I was like, ooh, somebody might say something nice about me. Let me show up. But I do have to go for another meeting. But no, I thank you. I'm excited. I'm glad you guys acknowledged it on here, but I will be presenting about it at a couple of meetings actually. But I mean, it's just the things that we do to keep our consumers engaged and live up to our parts of the grant. So, I mean, it's nothing that I think is that special, but it's, but I do love my job, and I'm glad that the hard work means something somewhere.
Absolutely. So a lot of us have struggle with this particular piece of CQM. It's hard to engage people, especially when you have big, large areas, but you have done an amazing job. And we're just so proud of you. So thank you for joining for the few minutes that you were able. We appreciate that you have more work to do in your community. So thank you for stopping in so we can just celebrate you. Yay, Raquelian and TRG.
Hey, thanks.
Setting
As a
great
person living with
examples.
HIV, definitely want to second that. You know, your work is so important. And, you know, I think it's really great to know that we have an expert, you know, and someone who's looked up to across the country here in our own Texas fold that, you know, we can share information and ideas and approaches with. So, you know, to Julie's point about thinking about future activities, maybe we'll have more, you know, opportunities for us to really come and share and compare, you know, in the future, so we can have some of your learning rub off on others. Thank you so much, Raquelian.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to now talk about what it takes to establish a network QIP. Now, ultimately, this is one of the things that is a sticking point for many folks, right? Like, you understand, hey, QIPs are expected. There are methods involved. We need to support people. All of this is included in the PCN. All of this has been discussed. But what we're trying to do now is to really think about what it is that you do from a nuts and bolts standpoint to guide a QIP. So we'll start with just a quick poll for slide 8. And we just want, we've asked some similar questions before, but these are unique questions. So our administrative agency currently has a regional QIP that is active and has a role for all of our providers, active and has a role for any in our region, whether they're funded or not. That's very special. We have one that's in discovery to select an issue of focus that's not started yet, or we do not have a QIP in process. Secondly, this one's a multiple choice, the only one that's select all that apply. Our administrative agency has following standard tools for the purpose of running a regional QI project that, and then we have a full laundry list of the types of things that, you know, you need to be able to functionally run a QI project. And we're going to be talking about all this, but we're just trying to have a sense. Do you have standard forms and formats? Do you have a way that you collect aims? Do you have a way that you have people talk about their root causes and send them to you? Not just talk about them, but that you collect. Do you have a way of collecting change ideas that are tested? I won't bore you by reading through all of these, but what we're really trying to do here is have a sense. What type of structure have you already considered? What structure do you already have in place to be able to champion your providers as they walk their quality journey? So we're just going to leave this up for a couple of moments. We know it's a lengthy one, so we want everyone to be thoughtful in their responses and not to feel rushed. So I'll leave this up here for probably about another 20 seconds or so, 30 seconds while we have some additional votes roll in. And the data are already speaking to me and telling me an interesting story. Vote, vote, vote so I can share. All right, I'm going to close the poll in about 4 seconds. All right, people doing the Indiana Jones dive underneath the door here. So let me share results. So most folks have an active QIP that has a role for all funded organizations. One of you even has a QIP that has a role for all HIV service organizations, whether or not they're funded, which is fabulous because this really speaks to achieving together in USEHE, right? Like we're going to achieve together when we create true systems of care, that aren't really, based on payers. We have one agency that's in a discovery phase and one agency that says we don't have one yet, but that's okay. This is a judgment-free zone. And hopefully, today we'll be able to discuss some of the things that will help you to get that going. Now here the data has created an interesting bell curve formation for us, right? In terms of something simple like AIMS, around half of you have that, but it may not feel very important to you because an AIM statement is literally just a sentence, and why do I need to actually collect that? We'll talk about that a little bit as we talk about our different projects and the strengths of having more structure. But we have quite a few folks, more than half, that are able to track the testing of change ideas, able to track data points, and really able to connect the activities to achieving together. Now, that last one I think is a huge advancement based on where we've been conversationally in the past, because we haven't had as much of an opportunity to introduce achieving together in our actual work. But we've been discussing that now for around 9 to 10 months, and it's really reassuring to me that you all are actually putting that into action. So let's think about framing out QIP for ourselves and for our providers. Now, there are a couple of things that you need to keep in mind, that when we are network leaders, we are pretty meta, right? Like we're operating at a place where we're designing the car and kind of steering it as it's going down the highway. So we do need to frame this for ourselves. Internally, as the AA, we need to have a standard process for the regional QIP cycle. When do we do discovery? When do we involve our CQM stakeholders, the committees, in that process? When do they help us with our root causes, right? Because if we don't do that process at our level, we're not going to have something meaty to share to tell people this is why this is important to you. So it's really important that we have a standard process at our level so that that process will provide us with the information and justification we need to really motivate the people in the field to join and to participate. So other things that are really important is, what does it mean to join and participate, right? Some of us may have actually worked in the field for provider agencies as well, and we understand how frustrating it is when someone comes and says, you must do the things, but it's really unclear what those things are. It's really unclear what is involved in, these requirements. And if there's a lack of clarity, is it a real requirement? I don't know. So you've got to take out that guesswork. Have a standard data collection process. Have standard data collection tools. Understanding that, folks may not like it. Fine, participate in our evaluation at the end of the year and help us improve it. The one thing that we are trying to prevent is to have people say, this isn't for me, I'm not going to. You can't make me, boo, 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 right? And we know that people do that an awful lot in the field. This framing on the left side is really helping to make sure there's not that wiggle room. There is no escape. You will participate in the QI project. So this also then includes, when when people send you information, you have a standard data collection process. You have a standard process to collect information on aims and change ideas. We know what it feels like to send information somewhere and then to never hear a peep about it again, right? It's like you're doing all this work, you're spinning these wheels and exerting, a lot of sweat, you may be even bleeding sweat, sweating blood, there you go. But then, so what? What does that mean? Well, as the AA, you need to have a sense of how to share this information back. Collectively, this is what we sought to do. This is what you're actually doing. And this is what it all means for everybody. That cannot be understated as something that's important to emphasize. And then also a curriculum so that you can actually help people see that participating in webinars, participating in coaching activities and conversations with us, your AA staff, is meaningful, and it's actually tied to a story arc of its own, right? And that story arc, of course, supports the QI project. Some of these things might be, really technical change idea pieces, but some may just be, process-wise. Here's our new form. This is our expectation. Please let us know if you have questions. So your curriculum can be at two levels. It can be about the QIP itself and the technical nature of the change ideas that you're putting in place, but it can also be about that process. So think both ways. For the HIV provider level framing, they need a standard process to identify their organizational aim, root causes, and change ideas. That's part of the OA, but this is what you're trying to do. Your framing at your level helps to facilitate their level. You're providing, per PCN 1502, substantial support and resources for the providers to be successful in their pursuit. So the standard process to report organizational data, including their change idea results, then helps them to see like, wow, okay, you're taking the learning that you've provided and you're helping me to stand it up and to make it work for me, right? So this form is something that helps me internally at the provider level to understand what it is that I could do or should do related to this project. So it's important to know that the framing that you have at your level should be used as a microscope or a sorting hat to help your providers to create their own framing at their level. And your tools basically are that extension for them. So that means that you've got to front load the work at the administrative agency, right? It's not just like, and then there was a QIP. No, you actually need to be a real captain of the ship and you got to put your hand on that wheel. That means you need to have an internal process with TA tools and coaching guides. You probably need to have internal conversation processes too, in case program or fiscal agents within your administrative agency are catching flack or heat from the people in the field. We know that it's a game that's played, but it's also just a strategy that people use, that in order to avoid doing new hard work, I'm just going to pit mom and dad against each other, right? So they'll call the program person and say, did you know what the CQM team wants? It's so unreasonable. This is why it's important for you to have a really strong communication mechanism internally too. And this is not just about the CQM team. This is very much about making sure the rest of the AA knows what's up. Why are we doing this? And why is it important? It's also an opportunity to get their feedback that this might be a lot and maybe we should scale back a bit. Or don't be afraid to put your foot on the gas. We support you, right? So having that internal process is so important. Creating the process for people to meaningfully participate is really important too. And again, that is one of the conversation points you use internally. Hey guys, here are our tools. You can involve key stakeholder perspectives in the design of both of these, and again, we've talked about internal perspectives, but there's the external perspectives too. You have a CQM committee. It is partly made up of consumers and providers. So, hey guys, here are our tools. What do you think? Right? That really helps to get their buy-in because they're like, hey, I helped to design it. Or, it's not perfect, but it's better than some other things that I've seen. That really helps you to get ahead of some of those issues where people, use strategies that potentially cripple the regional QI project. So also an established process with standard tools are needed so that you can evaluate it later on, right? We've spent a lot of time thinking about how an important aspect of your CQM infrastructure should be the evaluation. So you need to be able to have something to evaluate. So beyond that, then it's also an opportunity for there to be standard coaching and TA. So you have boxed content, so like a recording. This is our tool and form. You know, you only need to record that once, and then it's available for everyone for a long time. So, you know, you can say, you know, what does it mean to participate in the QIP? And why is this important to achieving together and what we do in our region? That can be, you know, roughly the same from year to year. But you could also record additional little videos that, what does it mean to participate in this regional QI project? Why are we focused on this issue? You know, and this really is an opportunity to involve other levels of your AA. You could even involve, like, you know, if you are an EHE jurisdiction, involve mayors or judges, you know, people who, you know, are outside our typical scope of what it means to be the AA team, but are critical to what it means to be achieving together in the context of our region. So we need standard QI process. We need our administrative agencies to be able to create those supportive tools and resources. So they're related to both CQM and QI. There are things that you can make yourself. There are things that you can borrow from other areas, but the idea is that you need to have this process in place, you know, to substantially provide those support and resources to subs. So, you know, how do agencies align their projects with the regional project? How do agencies report their focus for their project or their aim? How do agencies inform the AA of the measures they're tracking? How do agencies report the results of those change ideas and measures? These are all the things that should be, you know, at the front of your mind when you're trying to design your regional QIP life cycle and process. A lot of these tools are likely to stay pretty much the same from year to year, unless people have critical feedback for you as a part of the evaluation. But there are opportunities for you to make specific changes depending on the content. And again, what better way than to include your stakeholders internally and externally in this decision-making pathway? So again, thinking also about QI process involving peer learning and exchange, you don't want that to just happen at the CQM committee. You want the QI project and that curriculum we talked about to be that opportunity. How are people coming together to really see each other, to see themselves in each other's projects, and to see real opportunities to strengthen our health system? Is there a webinar or some other type of curriculum? You know, so, you know, are we having people come to shows like this? Is there canned recorded content? Is there a bulletin board that people go to? You know, there are a zillion ways that you can kind of create a curriculum. You know, the idea is that usually there's material and then a follow-up step. And how has the AA ensured a role for all subrecipients? This is one of the hardest nuts to crack and where we face the most resistance, especially among small social service provider agencies. But usually when you can show those agencies that you see them and you speak their language too, and you understand the critical role they play in the safety net, you win them over very quickly. Because they're like, oh, we thought that this was only for medical doctors, or we thought you only cared about medical doctors. It feels really good to be cared about. So it's important to make sure that you have these opportunities for all people to see themselves in whatever curriculum or story arc you create to kind of help facilitate the QI project. So a couple of recommended supports. A regional charter for the QI project is a best practice because it is a central place where everyone can keep referring back to. That prevents there from being a misunderstanding of what it is that we're really trying to do. And we know that scope creep can happen at multiple levels. It can happen even within the AA. So the regional charter is a communication tool, importantly, internally, right? If people at the high levels of your administrative agency are kind of wanting the QI project to be something else, you have something that you can come back and point to and say, no, this is what we said. This is what all expectations are pointing to. If you have folks in the field who are trying to get too far away from that project, you can divert their focus back to where it should be based on what the actual aim says. So that then allows you to have packaged what is the rationale and what is the timeline. It also allows you to, state what some of these other systems are, but, you should have a system for reporting in Shareback. You should have a framework to show how everyone's working together. And ideally, you'd want that to be, seen through the lens of achieving together. And of course, you can leverage the organizational assessment at both the AA and the provider level to target specific individualized TA. The last thing that I would recommend is, for us to revisit the contracts that we, have our providers sign, and making sure there is absolute clear language related to the QI activities at the provider level. Now, DISHIS has provided us with a rider that is very clear, but I think what's really incumbent on us as the AA is to think about how the Part B material, the Part A material that we've developed, and all the other material comes together in a really clear and clean contract so that individual agencies know what they're signing off on. That is something that's really important to be able to help later on. So in your toolkits, you'll see that there are a number of examples that come from the current Dallas Return to Care project. You have the QIP report form, the PDSA worksheet, the QIP guide. I know that Oscar is going to be talking about this during his show and tell. But you also have the Return to Care Charter, the QIP submission tracker, and a couple of the other frameworks that we've used to be able to think about how this all connects in Dallas. And the last thing that I'll say about this is, true to form, it's important that you don't feel pressure to recreate wheels. So we borrowed these forms and made them our own based on what Indiana and Missouri had done. So there are real opportunities to communicate with your peers and to identify best practices that you want to, try out in your own area. So I know that I'm running just a couple of moments late, so I'm going to skip this discussion and see if our friends from Tarrant County are able to unmute and to share a little bit about their most recent QIP. And Julie, I don't know if there's other context that you'd like to provide, or if maybe we lost her already.
Yeah, she privately chatted with me that she had to go to, they're having an EHE review, excuse me, with HRSA, but I have her slide, I can run through it, but we can wait till the end when we do everyone else's, so we don't break up the session.
Okay, all right. So let's see, I just fed you guys with a fire hose in terms of things that you should consider at the AA level. And I just want to see if there's any discussion that's come through the chat room or any questions or concerns that occur to you now. Based on the poll, it seems like quite a few of you have quite a few of these structural items in place, though it looks as though very few of you have all the structural items in place. And I don't know, this might be something that we can discuss later on when we're doing the share and compare, or if there's any kind of general reactions about those materials that you'd like to share now, we're all ears.
My general reaction would be that it all makes a lot of sense, and that in hindsight, using these would have probably improved what we'll be talking about later. But it's just great information to go forward with.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen.
Yes, definitely. That's what we're here for, to learn, right? And gain new tools and resources. And we might have heard about them before, but maybe it just slipped over us because we're always working so hard on so many things at the same time. So, repetition is our friend, and we have some, Dallas has been doing great work. They already have all these tools set up, and I'm sure they're willing to share. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And so as we gain these tools as well at the state, we'll be posting them on our website. We have some up there, but not as many as some of these regions that are here on the call today. So thank you.
All right, let's keep this show on the road. And I'd like to kick it over to Jasmine to talk a little bit about the QIP life cycle.
Absolutely. Can you see your screen? Okay, it still says Michael has started screen sharing for me. There we go. All right. So next slide. There we go. So we're gonna go ahead and bring in the QIP life cycle and really start with the discovery process of that and what that looks like for you all. And so we'll start with the poll. So the first question on the poll is, my administrative agency is comfortable coaching our funded provider agencies on their organizational QI life cycle. You can strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. Looking at question 2, the aspects of the QI life cycle that are most problematic for our funded providers is, and then you have the options of discovery, root causes, test of change ideas, or implementation. And then I am confident we will find a way to involve all funded provider organizations using healthcare neighborhoods or other social determinants arguments. And so yes or no. So we only have a few answers in so far. So we're gonna let you all trickle in. I know you all want to reply. Share, how are we doing out here? How comfortable are we feeling? You might hear some background noise. I have a locksmith doing some work in our office today. Almost. Okay, we're at 11 of 17. See, can we get a few more of you in here? Oh, I think we can go ahead and close the poll unless you want to see if the last 3 trickle in. Okay. So looking at our results, it looks like a lot of people agree or are kind of neutral about their comfortability of coaching. And then looking at the aspects of the QI life cycle that are most problematic for your funded providers, it looks like implementation is the hardest. And do I understand that that can be the most difficult process. And then in your confidence that we will find a way, most of you are very confident that we will find a way to involve all funded provider agencies. And so that's exciting, and that's a great enthusiasm and outlook to have on this work as we continue forward. Let's go to the next slide, Michael. Again, I apologize for any background noise. So we are all Texans, or you are all Texans. I'm not a Texan, unfortunately. But in Texas, the administrative agencies, or you all, act on behalf of dishes at the regional level. So all administrative agencies should really take the state lead on QIPs. And currently that means that we should all be focused on achieving together. It provides a much more streamlined process when we can take lead from dishes and then allow it all to trickle down into the community and at AA level and then at provider level for the work that we all do. And also helps us reach the goals that we are hoping to reach much faster and in a more organized way. The syndicate is an opportunity for regional stakeholders to provide input and feedback to the state regarding state work objectives. And then periodic statewide CQM meetings are also an opportunity for administrative agencies to update each other on regional activities, which is very important because sharing is caring, as Michael would always tell you. And some things that will work in your administrative agency may also be very helpful in other administrative agencies, or common problems that you'll experience at your provider levels, maybe other problems that other administrative agencies have experienced at their level. And so really sharing those best practices, concerns, and resolutions to those concerns can be very helpful to one another as you continue your growth, your learning, and the work that you all do. And we should, again, then support each other by sharing those resources, any templates that you create and form. A lot of what you'll see in your toolkit, as Michael stated, is shared resources that are trickling across the country that are really working in other areas of people who are doing the same kind of work that you all are doing and working with their providers to help them accomplish similar goals. My slides aren't moving. Did your slide move, Mike?
It did. It's
Okay,
one of those
there
things.
we
I'm
go.
like, are we sure that Mercury is not in retrograde still?
I'm like, I don't know if it's me. Okay, so planning for all providers to join in. Achieving Together really does seek to streamline our thinking based on its framework, right? So we're really focused on social determinants of health, building these healthcare neighborhoods and creating systems of care that really work to help us reach the health outcomes that we're working towards. So we should also consider encouraging status neutral thinking and discussions when we are discussing possibilities within your regional CQM committee meetings or within consumer groups, and using a meatball chart to visualize service mix in your region. Use a geographic mapping on where services are provided in a region so that everyone can clearly see like what's happening and where is that happening. And then are there any gaps of, based on the needs that we're seeing in the data, are there any gaps in those services that we should then be providing across our region? And then when facing possibly more difficult agencies, my slide is cutting off at the bottom
My
again.
slide, yeah. Sorry about that. When
It's okay.
you're working with recalcitrant agencies, it's important to remember basically that you should find a way to leverage their vision and their mission as an organization. All organizations have a vision and mission, right? So what is it that they say is their purpose? And then you say, I'm helping you with your purpose. Your purpose is to do this. This QI project is all about that. And it's a way to become a salesperson, basically, in terms of your thinking of how to engage people and what hook do you need for them.
Yeah, really help bring people, into the fold in a supportive way, and also a way that maybe streamlines their understanding of what it is that you're doing. When you can relate work back to what people already are intending to do or what they think they're doing, then it may click for them in a different way. I see that Julie raised her hand. Julie, did you want to contribute to that?
Yes, I just wanted, if you could please describe what a meatball chart is. I'm not sure that all of us know. I know Michael has talked about it before in some of these sessions, but maybe somebody wasn't there at that time.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Michael take that away because he uses those quite a bit in a lot of the work that he does.
Yeah, so I hope that our friends from Dallas don't mind. I'll share theirs because it's the one that I have right at the top of my desk. But the idea here is that you look at what agencies you have funded in your area. So we have those down the left, and then what service categories are funded in your area. And you know that some of us are just Part B. Some of us are also Part A, like our friends in Dallas here. So it's important to understand which agency is being funded for which service by which dollar. And I would say that for those of you who also, even those of you in STDC and STAR, who have direct C and D funded agencies, I will put that information here too, because that those are going to be some concerns that, kind of bubble up across time. That you're asking me to do this, but I have a HRSA project officer too that wanted me to do that. And so it's important for you to be able to see a similar type of salesperson approach that you can use in these types of conversations as you would when facing recalcitrant agencies that are saying, this project isn't for or about me. So here you use this as a way, like it's like a crystal ball. Where are we going to have like some really great facilitation of process? And where are we likely to see barriers to process? And how can I mitigate those barriers before they cripple my project, before the gates even fully open? Thank you, Julie, for calling us in on that.
Absolutely. And it really helps as an administrative agency to see where you have maybe too many of the same service, or maybe you're missing one, or how similar services can collaborate and work together.
Yeah.
I love it.
One other thing too, like that's more sophisticated and I think more and helpful for those of you that have like hugely expansive areas is also a geographic component to that. So you can literally take that meatball chart and then plop it on a map and force your providers to say, I know that you're providing services at 7 sites. I want the zip codes of those 7 sites, please. And what services are being provided at each of those 7 sites. Then you can start to like really beef that out. But that's more advanced. Start with a meatball chart, start with something first, and see what you can go from there.
All right, I think we're moving to the next slide. Okay, achieving together. Nope, we're still on the same slide.
The slide is titled Discovery and Front Loading.
There we go. I can see it. The answer to a question that okay, so when thinking about discovery and front loading our work, the answer to a question may change based on how or when a question is asked, right? So the answer will likely change depending on also whom you ask the question to. So part of administrative agency planning for regional QI projects should be really to keep a wide perspective on participation from all of your funded providers. And then within those funded providers, I would also highly encourage a blend of the type of staff that are then being engaged in those discussions, because frontline staff and leadership may have completely different perspectives that they are able to contribute and share in the work that you all do in planning those projects. Also creating the mechanisms that allow for all people to really easily participate. Does it have to be a virtual platform? Could it be hybrid? Is it best to meet bi-monthly or once a quarter? And really, pulling that out and piecing it together to figure out what's going to work best. It'll never be perfect. There will always be someone who cannot make a meeting, but doing the best you can to really make it easier to participate is going to provide you all with the most amount of responses and also less resistance, and asking the questions and how someone then may ask, or how they may answer the question, and who also may be able to show up. Place your focuses on information compelling to folks from different professional backgrounds. So I touched on that, but how can you really engage people throughout your funded agencies, and not just the same two people who are at all of the same meetings that are leadership, don't do any of the frontline work, and maybe don't have the full perspective for you. Also, do any of your funded agencies have people with lived experience on staff that also can share that unique perspective of lived experience and professional backgrounds to blend possibilities of improvement efforts that are needed and ideas for solutions on where we can go with those change ideas. Use your excellent and thorough planning as an opportunity to ensure that there are zero opportunities for providers to shirk the QIP. I love that word, Michael. Reference contract expectations as a ground floor to participation, right? So you want to always remember that, hey, when you have those people who may be more resistant to attaining, like, hey, I know maybe you can't make it, but is there someone else you can suggest? Because this is also an expectation in our contracts and our agreement of the work that we'll do together, so what's the solution to push forward? We are going to need to see someone there. Maybe it's not you though, and that's okay. Next. I don't know why slides are changing so slow for me. There we go. Okay, CQM committees and QIP designs. So thinking about our committees, just like you all advise dishes through the syndicate, your CQM committees should be advising you through your regional QIP design. It's important that you give various stakeholder groups the floor when discussing your discovery data to ensure that, again, there's this full range of perspective. This is something that echoes throughout the QIP lifecycle, but full range of perspectives, or as much of a range as you can get into a space, is going to be the most helpful for you. And it's also going to save you a lot of time and effort. If you show up to the table first with the vast majority of perspectives that can contribute to ideas about the problems when we're reviewing the data, as well as change ideas when looking for the solutions, you're going to save yourself a lot of time and having to keep coming back to the drawing board when your quality improvement initiative that you launched doesn't work. The CQM committee is a place to really gain the buy-in of early adopters and dissolve resistance from those recalcitrant agencies. Again, peer pressure really does work. If I'm already at your CQM committee, I'm probably more adept to what's going on and more willing to implement this work. And I can take it back to my agency and really encourage the people that are there, right? Why this is important, what they learned, and how the agency can be a part of this work. And just follow your Part B OA adapted by Dishes for inspiration, right? It really does give you that step by step. If I want to improve my score, what are the things that I need to do? And it can really give you those ideas. Now, how you do those and those change ideas, right, are the things that you're going to gather from your stakeholder groups. But what we can do, or what we should be looking to accomplish, you can really gather from that OA tool. Next slide. Oh, and as Michael reminded, it is OA domain D for QI when you're looking at improvement in your QI life cycle. Next slide, please. I don't, if you changed it, it didn't change for me, Michael. I don't know. There we go. So keep your eyes on the prize. That is the name of the game right now. If you have rarely conducted regional projects or have struggled finding a role for all of your funded providers participate, be practical. Yeah, you do need structure, but do you need 100% fidelity to that structure? Not right now, and not when you're, really just trying to get started, right? The initial part is to get started and get as many people to the table as you can, and you'll work through the kinks year by year. I assure you, in Indiana, year to year, we would be like, what were we doing last year? Oh my gosh, how could we have been doing that? Because throughout the year, we learned from our mistakes. We learned from feedback from the community. And then the next year, we were prepared to provide a much more structured format or much, better information or streamlined processes. And so be okay with starting with where you are and working your way up. If you've had a great deal of experience with regional projects, how can you continue to add sophistication? Sorry, my chat is popping over my screen. To your QIPs over time, right? So maybe now you're prepared for disparities analysis, and can you use any tools to help you calculate those disparities, like the disparity calculator? Status over or payer neutral approaches that are rooted in ending the epidemic. Are we really prepared to do that now that maybe you're more experienced, you have much more structure in the groups that you're working with? Okay, we're ready to dive in deeper to really do this work. If you suffer political wind shear in your region, I'm sorry, but start with a Army analysis to use an initial pathfinder, right? So it's going to save you time and energy down the line. And Michael, do you have an example?
Yeah, and I'll put it in the chat room. Army analysis is basically a stakeholder analysis to identify where you have facilitators and barriers. So it's basically allies, resistors, mitigators, and information. So you think about people, you think about places, and you think about information as things that are both start and stop forces. And you really think about, like, maybe there are, certain leaders within my organization that are the barrier. Maybe there are certain individuals in my organization that are the facilitator and are real champions of innovation. Maybe it's folks who are key leaders in the field and agencies that are the barriers or the facilitators. Maybe it's certain consumer voices. We all have those consumers, who wind up being a mouthpiece for an agency, right? And so those folks can really help or harm, our ability to operate regionally. So I'll put in the chat room, a link to an Army analysis tool that is from the IHI. I think that some of you that suffer this issue of, like, all the perspectives, all of the forces, and it's really hard to kind of like find a path. This tool might help you to find a path based on the path of least resistance.
Thank you for that. And again, remember that it's better to have something than nothing at all. So start with where you are and continue to add structure and move forward in your model. Also, once you have a working model, you can always then work through that and within your annual cycles, continue to make improvements. So that was a lot. I think we're prepared for discussion. Do we have any questions, concerns, thoughts? Anyone who wants to share possibly some insight of starting with where you are and kneading the dough to improve, or anybody who shares concerns of, well, I don't know where to really start, or where we're just trying to get it going. What do we do?
Yeah, I think that's a huge or a common problem, right? Analysis paralysis, where we just have so many things going on and we want to do such a great job that we think about it and overthink it. And then we end up right where we started from, and we don't have anything in place and we don't have anything documented. So even just document your journey, even if you're not doing a project yet, right? And that is a project in itself. And then you learn, and then you can move forward, like Jasmine pointed out, start slow, one thing at a time, and then it builds on the last thing. Starts making more sense and becoming more clear.
All right.
Y'all are so quiet.
Somebody pointed out it was like nearing lunchtime, and the meatball comment made them so hungry. So maybe that's what's going on.
Food. We're so close.
It's
We're
also been a
rounding-
really long week, and it's like the end of a long month, and I think we're all exhausted, and it's almost holiday time, so we're just living until next week where we get some time off.
Keeping our eyes on the prize. I understand.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Well,
we do appreciate you coming to our final session of 2021.
Amen to that. Yeah. Let's round the corner and talk about coaching your providers so that you can provide those critical supports and resources that really help them to participate. So we're going to have another poll now. Slide 25 polls. So these are some agreement statements. So my administrative agency has a standard process to provide the coaching and TA in our region. We provide supportive individual and group coaching to provider organizations based on regional QIPs. HIV organizations in my region see my administrative agencies to be a leader in establishing regional QIPs. And then finally, I have a strong understanding of how to provide individual coaching based on their service mix, quality goals, and recent organizational assessment score. So just leave a couple of moments for this to come in. Question 4 is more specific than question 2 because it's really leaning in on, in that individualized coaching, but understanding question 2 that there's sometimes a need for very specific individual stuff, but then there's the need for broader stuff that hits more sites. So we'll let you keep voting and submitting those answers. All right, see if we can get in a couple of more in the last 5 to 6 seconds here. All right, going once, going twice. Share the results. So most of us actually feel that we have a standard process in place to provide the TA. And I think that that's great, right? We didn't specify the type of TA. This is just about TA to our folks. And a lot of us have that. That's great. One of us feels less confident in that. And so, I think that that's an important area for us to support you on. So we'd like for you to reach out to us if you're looking for ideas, please. We provide support. Well, most of us agree that we provide support related to our regional QIPs. but it's probably the same agency that feels less sure. So we'll be interested in hearing your thoughts on that. My organization see us as a leader. So we have a little bell curve that formed here. Most of us are seen as leaders, which is wonderful. But for those of us that are less sure, especially that disagree, we'd love to talk to you more after this, because, this again is thinking about what we're doing right now with you all is group TA, but what we're seeing in the polls is the need for individual TA. So we want you to, be comfortable knowing that we're here to provide that TA to you, and that there's no problem being, the odd agency out. That just means individualized attention for you, which we're happy to provide. So reach out. Finally, most of us do feel that we have a good understanding of how to provide the coaching, but we're a little less sure on this one. And so this is where that OA really comes in to help us have that really concrete stepwise process when we're thinking about the TA that can be provided. So it's important to remember that process is really just the beginning. Once you have a standard process, you have to follow it and enforce it to a certain extent. Are agencies participating as expected along the established timeline? And what opportunities do you have to poke and prod the progress? This goes back to what Jasmine has said before. You need to have a structure, but you don't need to have 100% fidelity. What you want is to make sure that you can kind of poke and cajole people along as they go. Something is better than nothing. So making sure that at the ground level, your practical first thing is, did they submit anything? Really should be kind of like the entrance point. But as you increase your sophistication and involvement, then you can do more to poke and prod progress. So how do you make sure that you do have realistic and practical expectations? Well, it's important that some groups are going to, they're caught up, they're unprepared to talk about data. So if you're really trying to say, this is about data, you need to have data. If you don't have data X, Y, Z, you're hurting those people's ability to want to participate. You're predisposing them to feel like they're bad actors or they're rotten apples. Yes, it is a problem that they don't know their data, but we can address that separately and productively as opposed to dragging them down, which drags everybody down. We also know that some groups are literally allergic to writing anything down. And so that's going to be our focus with them. Like, oh, you said you have a policy. Can I see it? Oh, you don't have it written down. Well, that's not a policy, my dear. That's a practice. Let's move into the policy realm, and you work with each agency where they're at. So this is very important when you think about the 100% fidelity, because if you have some agencies that are higher achievers and more prolific participants, then they might have feelings if you're giving other people routine outs and passes, and rightfully so. I would be mad if I can cross my T's and dot my I's. What about these other jokers? Come on now. So you need to be able to talk as a system about meeting every agency where they're at, and that, agency A is a higher performer. So agency B needs a year to get there, and they will get there. And making sure that everyone sees and understands and feels that. And it's not like, why is there a system of playing favorites? Especially some agencies seem too big to fail. We need to get rid of that. We need to have realistic and practical expectations on an individualized basis that still adds up meaningfully to the aggregate whole. So again, the most important thing is that something happens, especially at first. And, just be mindful of those various rules of play. Make sure that the framework is fair and equitable as you meet people where they're at. So one way to do that and to show everybody that you are fair and equitable is to keep track of everything. That means that some of you who are allergic to writing things down need to get over that real fast. Get some Benadryl. But basically, that's how you avoid having those double standards. You have something you can point to. This is our baseline expectation. We've tracked when people are submitting things. Some people are always late, and that's a problem. Try to be less late, please. And then you can actually quantify that. Everyone else gets it in on time. Why do you need 3 months? That's not okay. Do I need to come and help you, so that you can be more timely? I'm not mad. I'm trying to be helpful, but we need to solve this problem, right? The voice is in a very solutions-oriented way. So, the idea here is what timelines expected? Are there expectations for the timing of different activities? How can you make that timeline long so that people who are prolific can do it a couple times, but people who are new and struggle don't feel like they're having themselves bent backwards and kind of ground into smithereens by expectations they can never live up to. So at first, focus on things like attendance at trainings. Did you come? You have to come. Did you submit any data? You have to submit your data. Did you tell me what you're testing? I have to know, right? It's not give me the full laundry list. I want to see, 2 change ideas a week. I would say, in fact, back way up and only require 1 full test of change cycle at first. The agencies that can do more absolutely will, but this is something that allows that space for those agencies that have never written anything down, especially data. Tracking documents really is your best friend. I cannot emphasize that enough. It steers the project overall, and it's a basis of providing, feedback. And of course, these are data points for your evaluation for your program at the end of the year to share with the judge, to share with, other stakeholders, to share with our friends at Dishes and the syndicate, to share with consumers. These are really important things that you had a structure, you have a process, you can actually talk about the, enhanced sophistication of your region. Even if people were starting from a remedial place, now they're less remedial. Guess what? That's progress. That's something to crow about. So the OA really is the coach's North Star. At the provider level, you acknowledge that, people are at different places. You can even show the D1, thing, blinded or unblinded, just have agencies A through G and say that some of you are a 0 and some of you are a 5. That means that for those of you that are a 5, we got you and we see you. For those of you at a 0, we've got you too, my dears, and making sure that they all see that this is how I'm meeting you where you're at, right? You've literally shown them. This is not a mystery. We're not playing favorites. This is actual data and actual evidence based on a valid tool. So it's helpful before launching the QIP to double check with providers on what they plan to do enhance their QIP activities. You've gone through and done the OA. So before you launch a new QIP, say, hey, we're going to be launching a new QIP. And last year you got a 1 on your OA. What are you trying to do to make yourself a 2 this year? Having that understanding of what people are already putting in place to enhance their own programs lets you design your project in a way that leverages that, right? How many times have we been in a place where we're trying to innovate something new and it's like, oh my God, I'm spinning these plates. I got this giant octopus in my arms. And then someone else in your organization, a leader or just someone else, another group is like, no, we're not doing that, right? So, it's important that we are showing how what we do is substantially meeting people where they're at in the community and pulling them all forward based on where they're at individually. And we can absolutely design our QI project and the different widgets and expectations to go along that. And it creates a framework for us to cheer ourselves and everybody else on. Now, at our level for ROA, we can focus on what we have available in terms of supportive resources and activities. In fact, that I think is one of the most important elements of the AA level domain D. It's all about how you're facilitating excellent work happening in the field. So you want to leverage the most recent OA to identify your own small changes to your own QIP process at that regional level. And you can tie that even to the individual scores from the agencies. So what's your D1 and what's everyone else's D1? And that's a good way to create a framework how everyone advances their sophistication together. And again, you always want to highlight for people, especially the people that are participating, that this is all highly evidence-based. It all points inward to a really, really, really tight set of literature around this content. And so we have the opportunity to avoid conversations of, I don't like that, or I don't believe it, because you don't have to, it's the evidence. All right, I see that we have around 20 minutes left. So I just wanna see if there's any quick questions here before I kick it over to you all to share your process. Any quick questions or concerns about that before we have our share compare? Right. I'm really excited for this. So now it's time to hear, what we're all doing in the field. And we're really interested in hearing what you do. And we do have this presentation from our partners at Dishes on their QI activity. So I want to hear from you all first before we hear from our partners at Dishes. So Julie, just to kick us off, because we don't have Caitlin here, would you like to review the slide for Tarrant?
Sure, absolutely. I can do a high-level overview. I don't know all the specifics of their projects, but I know that they're a leader in quality improvement and they do great work. And Caitlin sent us over her slide. Like I mentioned earlier, they had a HRSA review today around their ending the epidemic funding. So they had to go at 11. So in the last 3 years, they've done a lot of things. Most recently, 21 to 22, they are working on increasing viral suppression rates of Black and trans women. They looked at all their data and they also worked with their consumer team. I think it's named HIT, Health Improvement Team is what it stands for. And so together they picked those goals. So they're working to improve women ages 18 to 39 by 15% from the current baseline of 68.42% viral suppression. So we can see that's a pretty low number. So that's a good goal, right? And especially after looking at your data, seeing where your disparities are. The Tarrant County AA will increase percentage of Black Latino MSM retained in care for the year 2021 by 5%. So small increments for that one, but very important. The biggest population we know by looking at data is our MSM population. And in the Dallas region and Tarrant County, Black and Latino MSM is the most predominant. The project selected by the CQM committee, the CQII committee, so they have a couple teams going on. They have their big CQM committee. Then they also participate in the Create Equity Collaborative, which is what I believe they're calling their CQII committee. And then they have their Health Improvement Team, which is comprised of consumers and community members where they get input. And the consumers actually lead those meetings. They are very active. It's been very successful. It's been in place for a couple years now. They have a software system that some of you all have collaborated to learn more about from previous sessions that Caitlin and Lisa have shared with us. It's called LifeQI. It's a platform where all the subrecipients can enter their data. The AA can track it. People can track themselves. It's really cool. I've also got to see some demonstrations. They update their subrecipients with what's going on with one-on-one meetings on a monthly basis. They also do individual technical assistance sessions. And then that's where they talk about updating interventions as needed and implementation plans. They also have providers and communities sharing and sharing different ideas, cross-share through community and subrecipient meetings where they're all there together. And then they disseminate and spread activities to include presenting on their Create Equity project to other participants. They recently did their case presentation for the nation. I believe it was last month. They also are developing a subrecipient scorecard. So at any given moment, they got a dashboard where they can see where everybody's at. And based on feedback from the Consumer Advisory Board, a need was identified for better health education materials. And the Tarrant County Administrative Consumer Advisory Board or Health Improvement Team developed 3 roadmaps and local resource guides. 8 steps to your first appointment, 10 steps to undetectable, completely you, living and thriving positively, Thriving Guide A, local resource guide. So some really cool materials that came out of collaboration from community members and people that work at the AA. So they just do really great work. If you guys get to know that. I know most of you are familiar with their work because we've had them present before, but they're always willing to share their ideas and their pathways to success. So I'll speak for them that if you have questions about this, please contact Caitlin or Lisa Mutaya. Thank you. Moving
Thanks,
right
Julie.
along.
All right, so it's really great to hear from all of you about what's going on in your shops, and I'm wondering if anyone wants to volunteer to go next.
I know Angela Allison with BV Cog has prepared a slide as well. If you could give her control. She chatted with me earlier that she's ready.
All right, and then Oscar, you can go next. She beat you out. All right, so we're looking for Allison. Sorry.
Angela Allison.
Angela Allison. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right, Angela, you are now a co-host, so you should be able to share your content.
All right, thank you so much. I am going to share my slides.
Great.
There we go. Are you able to see my slides okay?
There it is.
It looks good on my screen too. Okay, there we go. All right, so the QIP project that we're going to talk about, well, I'm going to talk about is insurance intervention, which is a piece of a larger scale AA collaborative project in our office between the compliance monitors, the data manager, and myself. I'm the ADAP liaison. So this project, the topic selection was based on monitoring results that indicated providers need more support to improve processes used to screen for other payers. So the big picture goal of our overall project is to improve payer of last resort compliance. And then kind of the secondary goals or effects that we are hoping to see are that our service providers are able to preserve Ryan White dollars and improve client access to healthcare and ultimately health outcomes. So at a previous meeting, we introduced the insurance optimization component, which was a tool that helps equip providers to use their own data to identify clients who are good candidates for marketplace plans. And today I'll discuss the intervention piece, which is an AA level component that allows us to leverage client data to identify other subsets of clients who may qualify for help from other payers.
Fabulous.
So the subset of clients that we were interested in looking at are clients who depend highly on Ryan White to pay large medical costs. So we wanted to see if we could assist in screening these clients to see if these high medical costs can be shifted to another non-Ryan White payer. So our process for this project was that we created an ARIES report to gather client data on LPAP and OAHS expenditures. And we paired that with the use of age FPL and insurance status data filters to screen for possible other payers like Medicare or Medicare assistance programs or ACA marketplace. And then our next step was that we placed an intervention call with each agency to discuss the clients that we found and assist them with making plans to provide education, outreach, and referrals to these clients. So on my next screen, I just want to give a quick example of one of the clients that I'm talking about. So this particular client we identified in our ARIES data as having high OAHS expenditures, which were over $1,500 in the past 6 months. And based on the information in our report, we saw that the client was uninsured, a US citizen with an FPL that puts them in range for a $0 premium ACA plan. We also noticed in the client's ARIES record that there was no evidence that agency staff had attempted to provide health insurance education or a referral anytime recently. So when we placed our intervention call with this client agency. We discussed this client's high medical costs and the probability that they could get onto an ACA plan with no monthly cost. And ultimately, the plan should then be able to help pay for many of the client's medical expenditures. And then, of course, the AA could kick in there at the end and pay whatever's left over in terms of covering that client's medical expenses using health insurance assistance. We asked the agency if they had talked to the client about insurance or tried to provide a referral, and the agency acknowledged that it had been several years since they talked to this client about obtaining health insurance. So we assisted the agency in making a plan to contact the client to provide education and a referral during the next ACA enrollment period. The plan includes how they will reach out to the client, what educational materials they will provide, and what organizations they can identify for that client in order to provide that referral for enrollment assistance. And then finally, we told the agency that we would follow up on this client's record during open enrollment just to verify that the client had at least received that education and referral services that we had planned out with them, and that we hoped to see documentation of insurance enrollment and reduced OAHS spending on this client's service list. And then ultimately, after our intervention calls, we were able to use that client list as an accountability mechanism to look for education, evidence of health insurance referral, education, health insurance enrollment or utilization, or just other documentation that might help substantiate payer of last resort compliance. So in terms of stuff that we've written down, we have written down detailed instructions for how to create, run, and use the report that we made for this project, as well as an outline for conducting the agency intervention calls. We also have maintained an electronic folder with examples of educational materials and handouts, contact information for organizations that can assist clients with signing up for various other payers like Medicare, ACA, or similar payers like that. And that's our presentation.
Wonderful. That's so exciting because, what you're talking about basically is helping, one, to manage your program risk from a compliance standpoint. Two, you're being a great shepherd of your system resources to make sure that they can extend farther. Stop you sharing there. And you're also able to, I think, make really strong payer neutral arguments that lend themselves to achieving together, right? Because you're telling the client and the agency, I'm helping you to level up. I'm increasing your coverage. Should you have additional needs not, covered by Ryan White, you don't have to worry about that anymore. You just go to the doctor. Isn't that a relief? Isn't that a breath of fresh air that you don't have to worry about that? And most of my community will be like, yes, it is such a relief. Thank you. So I think this really, brilliantly designed project. All right, Oscar, you're up.
Muted, yes, okay. Sure. All right. Boom. Okay, here in Dallas, we had an advantage to, we never run a region QIP project. That's good. Well, it's bad, yes, but we see the good because we start from zero. Whatever it is a growing. So we come up with this clinical quality management venture project, which, we decided previous to COVID, we had a very high no-show rate among Ryan White service providers, service receivers, and it was close to 50. It was 48% based on some data from the subrecipient level. The no-show rate was very high. And from Aries-based, our real viral load suppression was 62% based on the data provided to Aries. So we later found out that the data is incomplete. whatever it is, data is always evil, sometimes and good most of the time. So we decided to come up, okay, let's focus on those patients who are out of care. This is always, if we're gonna align this process to the end of the HIV epidemic in 2030, we better start with something that project and say, okay, this is the road towards that price. We decided to come up with this out of care project, and yeah, okay, how to present this one to the recipients as an initiative, right? We have to deal with so many things, and the guidance on that is important. Thanks to our guidance on the consultant, we present to the recipients, to all of them in trainings, okay, how we gonna implement this project? We come up with all right, think about this. What would be a key question for you to do if the patients are out of care or falling out of care or late in care? How do you define that in your set of clients, in your universe? What data you'll be using? You're gonna be using surveillance, you're gonna use their own EMR, or you have a different data that you'll be using. We found that, yeah, there's so many data around the HIV care, and we need to define that. You need to define that. It has to be like comparable. If you wanna play the game of the QIP, which is actually fun. So we come up with, think about if that data will create the opportunity for you to have a disparity calculator applicable to that, and you will focus that on your population that suffer the most, those who are out of care, because definitely there is no access. There's a lot of limitations on that. So there's a more discovery question that you should do in a training that we provide to the recipients. Actually, we encourage them to come up with that point, with that thinking, way of thinking. So thanks for our consultants, we come up with this. This is a form that help our subrecipients to guide them, create the aim statement, something smart, right? Smart goal, something has to be realistic. I mean, it is, if your real viral suppression is 99.9 in some of the picture that you presented before, in reality, what is it? Okay, it's 42. So you're gonna increase to 99, you can't. So the aim statement has to be something realistic, something that is a possibility for you to do it within your own limitations, your own abilities to complete. So there's a session, a training was created, the beginning to build the aim statement. I mean, bring it from the ground, educate the subrecipient, what is an aim statement? How do you build it? How do you create it? And what elements should this aim statement should have? And then for that to accomplish, you've got to think on the drivers, the primary drivers to affect that goal, secondary drivers. And this form helped them to guide and be more focused on what they're looking for. Then what's the measure? What your denominator, what's your numerator, how you're going to be affecting, who will be participating, and the green portion is how do you report that. But well, some people say like, it's not that simple. There is more to tell, more to share. Yeah, you got the purple section for that. Great. So, and they come up for the next meeting, for the next training, or the next workshop, they come up with this on every single one of this. Mm-hmm. They have the guide was created for them. If they cannot have access to us for, they don't want it, I don't want to email because that's going to create, okay, have this guidance that has this is a full compendium of 17 pages that guide the subrecipients on forming the team, setting the aims, establishing the measure, how do you do it, selecting changes, how do you do it, how you test those. So this is a guide, basically grab the hand of those who wants to learn and see how you do it. How do you implement the PDSA cycle? How often? How are you going to improve it? How are you going to manage that? The result, the outcomes, and going back. The guide itself is a tool for them to consult. And plus this guide, we have the workshop recorded, the training recorded, and they have access to the recording and go back and tune up details that they didn't quite catch well. But they have the ability to, and it's public to them. I mean, they can have access at any time, a YouTube channel, a CQI, Glass Cube, where there is a set of tools that they can consult and go back and retune. They still have questions. We are completely open via email, via phone, via smoke signals if they want. So that's, and then point of this one is also recipient were focused in return to care project. Some of them decide to use continued. What is continued? Is an innovative process. Some of you actually already using different companies. This is a company name that provide the tablet to those who were identified for the subrecipient that are out of care. Some of them call them late in care, which is actually pretty nice analogy. And once they are identified, the continued agency trained the case manager or whomever going to distribute the tablet, and they go to the client, train the client how to use it, how to be connected on telehealth. But then some agencies decide, I would like to have a kiosk. For COVID restriction, I can have a room for them to come over and do the consultation inside the building, but in a separate room. Perfect. That's another way to use the tablet. And the other one, actually, one of the agencies suggests to have a drive-through. They don't want to step out of the car. There it is. Not just New Orleans provide daiquiri to go. But this actually is great because you can stay in a car, run the tablet, run the consultation with your provider, and go. That actually is functional as well. In some areas, is actually very functional. In some of them, they is not applicable, but they do have the possibility to use continuous system in those three ways. So client one-on-one, so the client take the device to their house and they carry the device with them. By the time that they need to have a consultation or the appointment, they just go and grab the tablet, sit down, and complete the session that is a medical visit. They have the guidance, but let's say some of them who didn't decide to use the tablet, they use they implement a project. They are implementing a project based on return to care as well. So none of the subrecipients are out of that scope for the regional project. All of them are involved. And the good element is that they don't have to use the continued. They can use the traditional methodology to make a phone call the patient, go visit the patient, or send them a letter, or any way that they usually or traditionally they do to bring back the client. They use it. And what they do is tune up the kind of population that they are targeting, like Hispanics, monolingual, transgender. And what happened that I stopped sharing? Oh yeah. Okay. I run out of time, I guess. Yeah.
Yes. So, I'm sorry. I just want to, yes, but that's great. I think you're getting a lot of really great feedback in the chat room, Oscar, about, making sure that, that learning that we've had, that you have a central approach that allows agencies to self-identify how they're going to work, on the project. Bye, Christy. So we are a little behind, and I'm wondering if before too many of us go, if a representative from any of the following, TRG, University Hospital, or STDC, wants to present theirs.
Hello, I guess I'll be back.
Hey, Erica.
Hi, hold on, I'm looking on the side. Let me move it so I can see you. Sorry, that's because I had now I cannot see myself. Okay. Well, for us, I'm not gonna take that long. I'm just gonna go through the questions. Just wanted to share that it's been like challenging, I guess, and also learning experience through time and like trainings that I have been. Sometimes we have ideas and we focus on those and we lose track of things. And then we have to refocus and see, okay, what is it that I'm working on and how I'm gonna getting there, right? So as we have been working, our goal, I'm not gonna share the screen, I'm just gonna go ahead and talk it out. Okay?
Sure, yeah.
It says, what have been our QI projects for the past 3 years? Basically, our objectives have been to decrease viral suppression, retention in care, and increase acuity. So what we have done at the beginning is that we wanted for us to work as a region, and we all wanted to do the same things. And of course, it didn't really work that well because everybody has different situations in their communities, and it was different for everybody to do the same things. So at the end, we all decided that it has to be done individually on every specific area, and they do have different activities to target those. So our main goal will be the viral suppression, to increase to the viral suppression, but how they're going to be working on it, it was depending on every HSDA because of their differences and cultural differences and how the community was. So we did it that way. And some of them had different methods to do the viral suppression and the retention in care, because we do believe that both of them go like hand by hand and there's no way of getting them separated. So they did many things like text, calls, emails, different way of communicating with the clients. Also, the use of technology to be able to get all this information and and for the clients, the consumers to have accessibility to telehealth and maybe continue with the transportation, and also with the MOUs with the laboratories for them not to be able to miss their lab work and stuff like that. So even though these are things that we think that are like we do all the time, it's something that does make the difference. And this affected on different areas on our HSDAs differently on one another, but this was like mainly what was happening on them. How were the topics selected? Basically, the QI projects had been selected by streamlining the goals and objectives from the HAB plan, the Achieving Together strategic plan, and the quality management plan. So once we have that, what we're gonna be working on, it is presented to the quality management committee, where it is selected what QA project is going to be selected for, let's say, viral suppression. And each HSDA will select a QA project based on the needs within their community. And they will do an analysis and development of the QA project selected to implement such project. Each HSDA works independently, but during the QA meetings, information is shared on the progress and on the projects, and also the AA will be with them to be able to provide guidance and assistance. How do we track the progress? Each HSDA will report every month to provide the information to the AA, and we utilize ARIES to do data analysis and do some recommendations on improvement with that information. And do we keep that in writing? Yes, on our QM plan, it's a living document. So we go ahead and document everything, how it's working on every HCA.
Great.
That's
it. It sounds like to reemphasize what Julie had entered in the chat room, like you have a good process and you make changes as needed, depending on what, your needs are and what the evidence suggests. I would recommend, if you don't already have something like this, for your CQM evaluation, and this goes for the other presenters as well, make sure that you can quantify the learning and changes that you made to your process at the end of the year, because then that helps you to present to your stakeholders, how your program is operating and the relative health of your program. It also is an opportunity for you to introduce visuals for like, this is our timeline, and then here's a post-it note or kind of like an arrow or like a call out, at this time we learned this and we made, a shift, and things like that. I think that that's really helpful as well. And I'm really excited by these conversations. I'm excited to think, maybe next year we're going to focus more on having these like really deep dives in fishbowl examples. Like, maybe you have one agency kind of walk you through everything, but we'll talk about that another time. I saw that Heather had noted before you, Rhonda, that she was ready to go. So I'm wondering, Heather, if you're still here, if you can unmute and share, and I will make you a co-host in case you have slides.
Not sure, or is Heather and Tiffany both ready?
I think it was Tiffany.
Oh, Tiffany, I'm sorry. Hi, Tiffany.
Both from Houston, but part A, part B.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Hi, Tiffany.
Okay. Hi.
Co-host.
Heather and I are cohorts at heart, so it works.
Okay.
Let's see. Let me try to share my screen. and I will blaze through this really quickly. I answered the questions. I think you guys can see the screen. I
Yeah.
answered the questions on the first slide. It's over the last 3 years, TRG has really taken a systems approach to quality management in tandem with allowing our organizations to do their sort of internal specific focuses on viral load suppression and things like that. But we had a lot of disparities. You know, some areas had a lot of stuff and in other areas needed to be brought up. So in 2019, we focused on an oral health care expansion. And then in 2019, 2020, we focused on telehealth, which actually kind of worked out because of COVID. And then right now we're participating in the Create Equity Collaborative. I think one of the things we are lacking is that writing it down aspect and really having those tracking tools in place that you can actually pull out and look, you know, retrospectively at. So that'll be a 2022 task. I just did mine in our gap analysis when we looked at our areas. And so for our oral health care, like I said, based on consumer feedback and some frustrations in the community, as well as our P&A process, we realized that there were gaps in oral health care. So essentially what we did was try to remedy that with adding additional providers in the area, which is easier said than done. But we were able to add an additional provider in our Galveston HSDA and also in our Beaumont HSDA. And we reworked our Houston HSDA and how our contracting process went to try to relieve some of their capacity issues. We figured out our Galveston folks were actually traveling to Houston. That was the only funded provider for them. So it just wasn't working. And so right now we have funded providers in every area. We've increased that capacity and we've removed that bottleneck in some of our areas, and it's working out really well. And we always take a ground up approach. So we made sure to have community forums so that our consumers knew what was happening in each of their retrospective HSDAs and took that feedback and fed it into our process. In 2019, 2020, we really focused on telehealth. There were a lot of gaps. A lot of providers were still hesitant at that time in 2019 or 2018, 2019. It was being used in some areas, but not others. It was being used for one service, but not another service. And so we really tried to bring everybody up with this particular project as well. And so we had our clinical consultant went out and did a massive evaluation of capacity, of barriers, of provider buy-in, of consumer feedback. Raquelian did an awesome job of consumer feedback and what their thoughts were about telehealth, their hesitancy and all of that kind of stuff. And so ultimately we were able to put telehealth in all of our provider locations. I think I had one location that had a little bit of a logistical issue, so they were a little bit slow, but they're here now. COVID, you know, pushed everybody in that particular direction. But I really think this particular project allowed our providers to really jump into COVID responses without hesitation. They all had the infrastructure. And so it was really just building up a little bit more capacity where it was needed to support the influx of folks who are going to touch telehealth during the COVID pandemic.
Can I ask you a really annoying AA type bureaucratic question? So since you guys had the luck of kind of just the timing of your telehealth project ahead of COVID, was there any revisiting operationally of your COOP expectations or on your regional COOP as COVID kind of took place? And you'll probably talk about that a little bit on this slide, but you know, in terms of thinking about how learning from one project directly feeds into another project, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
I think one, we figured out that policy needed to catch up to what they were doing in practice. And I think actually what really happened was all of the provider barriers went away. Providers finally realized that this was a good thing and that this was an opportunity. And so all of the hemming and hawing and providers like just jumped in and they were like, oh, well, we can see, you know, more clients. Oh, well, we don't have, you know, no shows. We had a lot of agencies where their no-show rates, you know, changed drastically because now you can reach a client where they're comfortable. We do need to sort of revisit a few things with telehealth in terms of do we carve out spaces and things like that. what are the best service categories that we should keep in place now that we have the capacity to do so, what should go back to face and things like that. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but COVID hasn't really left yet either. So
yeah,
we're riding with both right now. So in 2020, our COVID response really kind of took what we were doing with telehealth and just ramped it up. And we really just focused on how do we keep our services going and not break that continuity of care during the COVID-19 pandemic. So we leveraged the telehealth. We really expanded services like EFA and food bank and things like that, wraparound services. And then we tried to help our providers develop COVID-specific policies and service standards to support what we were doing. All but one of our providers was able to launch their telehealth to really meet the needs. I have one provider that's still having a little bit of technical issue, but they'll get there. And then everybody was able to incorporate some form of telehealth into medical case management and OAHS and mental health. And then this is sort of what it looks like. So we ignore the words. I know there are a lot of words, but really ultimately what this tells us is that one, our utilization did not drop that much. So if you look from 2019 to 2020, we had a couple hundred folks difference. So we were able to continue to touch our clients. We had a dip in medical case management, but we had an surge of non-medical, which just tells us that our staff was helping folks in a different capacity during COVID. And then our viral load actually went up. Our viral load suppression went up during that time. So I was super excited to share that with our providers because I know everybody was working like crazy people during the initial phase of COVID-19. So, and then referral for healthcare, just to spotlight, referral for healthcare is our highest utilized service in our HSTA. And those are the folks, our AEW workers that are working with the ADAP program. And they really hit the ground running and really served a lot of clients. There was an 8.5 increase in utilization, which if you guys throw in Houston, that's a lot of clients. And they did 31,000 service encounters. And that's probably just the ones that they put in. I'm sure we missed some. So that service was super ramped up. They were also able to do a lot of things virtually, which I think really helped. They were able to use the telehealth platforms, use the phone and do face-to-face. So I think having all of those tools in their toolbox really helped them keep that program afloat. And then just the create equity is going on now. I won't jump into that too much, but we're looking at mental health and viral load suppression. And that's sort of our baseline data is that about half the folks in our region aren't being screened for mental health. So we're focusing on increasing screenings in the area and then increasing those referral linkages in our area to make sure that those folks who are screened appropriately, diagnosed, can get to the appropriate referral as needed. So we've done a lot of consumer feedback surveys. We've done a lot of provider surveys. We have 4 pilot sites. What's nice is that our surveys are actually touching all of our funded providers and not just the 4 pilot sites. So we're actually getting feedback from everybody, and we're actually getting feedback from our consumers and sort of putting that in a bow and using that to take the next steps. Right now, we're working on creating a uniform training, which Dishes is graciously helping us with. And we're working on our EMR data reporting. We realized that our providers did not have a capacity to tell me how many folks in your organization are not virally suppressed who have a mental health diagnosis. Like that, that report didn't exist. And so we're working on just building that capacity to be able to run those reports and things like that. So that's us in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. This last issue I think is really important to emphasize because, we know that behavioral health is one of the most important social determinants of health that, impact retention and viral suppression. It's been on our radar since the beginning. Many of the people in the HIV field have crossover experience with, other kind of, aspects that are on that. So you would think that our passion and our focus would have us really managing those problem lists, really understanding those comorbidities in our clinical North Star, which is our electronic health record. And we see all over the country that people are not managing this well. And, part of this is we cut off our nose to spite our face in HIV by creating all of these siloed, independent, carve out programs. And we forgot, oops, you know, HIV is just one thing. And now in 2021, it's a chronic manageable condition. It's one of probably the lesser important things of the broader complex of issues that impact people's like ability to maintain gainful employment, maintain a positive outlook of hope for their children and the future generation, and all of these things that, you know, are kind of crunchy feely, but really matter. So I love that you're learning that about the system and you're really pushing on it because it's going to affect other areas too.
We're excited.
All right. So we are way over now, but we are recording, and I want for posterity the ability for us to you know, to share with folks. Oops. To share with
the
folks.
good news is that the recordings will be on our website pretty soon. I think every single administrative agency presented something today, so that's wonderful. I did not notify the Part A's, which was Heather and anyway, from Houston Part A and Austin Part A, Nancy, who had to go. But we can skip my parts for the sake of time. We can show them those next time, but I'm also in the Create Equity Collaborative. We're focusing on ages 25 to 39 because they have a 3% lower rate of reaching viral suppression than our overall population of the Ryan White Part B. We have not made much progress. We looked at our data and it dipped down in May, but it's coming back up. But what we have seen is we're getting new clients every other month by the hundreds. And so when a client is new, they are generally not suppressed, which is why our viral suppression rate has not really gone up. But the good news is once you get people in care and they're on meds for a couple of months, their viral suppression, they will become suppressed and then those rates will go up. So in ending the HIV epidemic, that's our goal. It's not, you know, looking specifically at one number, it's looking at all the numbers, trying to figure out what's going on. So you can see down here at this slide down here that we've had an increase consistently since we started in March to November. We have gained 844 clients to our denominator, or in other words, our clients between the ages of 25 and 39 who have been enrolled in the program. And since then, 586 of them have become suppressed since they joined or got enrolled. In our overall population, we've seen an increase of 2,000 people in just 9 months. So the pandemic is hitting us hard, but it's good that people are coming back. In May, you can see we lost people, right? We had people come in, but they must have been new to care because they were not suppressed, or they didn't get their labs done, or the doctor didn't order labs for COVID precautions, all kinds of different possibilities. So we'll dig deeper. But I really don't want to take up any more of anyone's time. I so appreciate y'all for staying. Y'all did great presentations. I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thanks for coming along with this ride for the last 8 sessions. It's been really great. And we're looking forward to keeping the conversation going.
Yes, we'll be in touch. Happy holidays, everybody. And I'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend and happy
Great work.
holidays.
Thank you.